Hi everyone. In this tutorial, we are just going to go ahead and take a look at Adobe Raw, Adobe Photoshop Raw. So we are in Bridge where we left off, and I'm just going to double click on this image that I want to edit in Adobe Photoshop Raw. And now we have moved from Bridge into Adobe Photoshop Raw. And I'm just going to do a very quick tutorial. I'm not going to get into too many of the super cool features on here. I'm just going to do the basics so that you can start working on some of your images. So up here on the right hand side, we have really all the tools, the main tools that we need for exposure and color adjustments. This is what's called a histogram, and at the very basics, histograms basically tell you how many pixels you have in your picture and how dark or light or what color those pixels are. Because this image is so dark, we see that most of the data is contained at this end of the spectrum, which is the darkest parts of your image. It represents the darkest parts of your image. This represents midtones, and then I've lost my mouse. And then this is whites, but we're not going to get into that right now. But you can click up here and it shows you what parts of your image. See these little blue specks that just popped up? It shows you what's the darkest part, and then if you click on the other side, it shows you the whitest parts of your image. But we're not going to go too much into detail there. And then here we have our metadata, so we can see that it was shot at f13th at 1/100th of a second, 3200 ISO, at 38 millimeter lens using a 16 to 15 millimeter lens. You have the option here to adjust your white balance using one of these presets. So this is the white balance as I shot it. I could choose auto and see what raw suggests. Not so into that, so maybe daylight's better. I don't think so. You could try, like, if you do tungsten, remember how we said if you shoot tungsten in daylight, it turns blue? This is what happens because I was shooting in daylight with a little bit of, I think there was like an LED light or something in there as well. But we'll just do to as shot because I'm pretty happy with the white balance. And if you just feel like you need to tweak it a little bit, you could either make the image cooler, well, that's tweaking it a lot, or warmer. But we'll just stick to that mid-range, it's fine. And again, you can also add a little, if you wanted to bring out the more rosy tones, you could slide this over. That's like way out there. And likewise, you could make it super green, but we'll just keep it in the middle. Actually, I'll put it at 0. Okay. So now we're into our exposure tools. So you can, again, just like the white balance, you can see if you want raw to choose it for you. You hit auto and see how bright it made everything. I think I don't like it so bright because it's very noisy because I shot at such a high ISO, and there's also all these scratch marks on the magazine that I used as my backdrop, and I don't really want to showcase that, and I just think it doesn't look very good. So I'm going to go back to default, and I can just manually adjust the exposure as I please. I can make it more contrasty or less contrasty. I can blow out the highlights, or I can just take them all away. I can emphasize the shadows, or I can really lighten them up. Same with whites. I can just blow out the whites in here. I can make the blacks lighter or darker as I choose. And then clarity, if your image is a little fuzzy, this tool is useful to make it sharper. Vibrance brings up the color and it also can take it away. Same with saturation. So look what happens when you bring up the vibrance and the saturation. It's crazy. super psychedelic. Okay, but I'm just gonna go back to the default image. Um, you can crop the image. This is the crop button here on the top left hand. And you can choose, let me go to the menu real quick. You can say, I want to do like a normal crop where you can just pull it to any kind of dimension that you want. Or you can be more strict. You can do a 1:1, which is a square. 2:3 is what my camera shoots. That's a full frame, but some other cameras do 3:4. There's also all these other types of camera sizes, which we haven't gone over. My guess is that you're probably 4:5 on your cameras. But let's just say for the purposes of this tutorial, I want to do a square crop because I want to put it on Instagram or something. So now it seems okay. And then I can just tilt it a little bit to even it out. And there I have my square image. Oh, another thing, this is the healing brush. So if you've done a portrait or something and somebody has a pimple, you can use the healing brush. I like to, I think with this we could clean that up, and it clones what it thinks that we should use, and it cleans that up for us automatically. Pulled that background, which is nice and clear, and cleaned up those ugly marks. Same there. You can even do like a preview of before and after, or with or without overlay. So it's taking away the overlay. And this shows like the before and after, basically. So this is what the edits that I made, and this is after. I mean before. It's getting late. Anyway, so this feature down here on the bottom right is very convenient for viewing the changes you've made to your images. And now we're back to just looking at it as is. And then I'm going to go ahead. This is probably my most favorite tool. This is the brush, and you can customize your exposure in certain locations. So see up here, I'm not really a fan of how glowy that is, that reflection up there, and say I wanted to get rid of it. I could set, so after I click on the brush tool, I could say I want to really darken that area and up the contrast so that we can't see it. And now I'm just painting over that with the brush. So all I'm doing is adjusting the exposure in the things that I paint over. And sorry, there is a glitch where I can't see my brush size unless I do this. I've hit this keyboard shortcut, which is like a parentheses. I'll have to show it to you in class. But so I've made my brush smaller. You can make it bigger or smaller using this function. And I'm just going to paint over these unsightly highlights. Let's see, get rid of that. I like that reflection there. And then I'm just going to get rid of some of those scratches. And then it's also making it less noisy, which I like. See? So we can do our preview down here. See? And that looks to me more like a nice backdrop. Now, say you're like, it's a little too dark. I think I just want to like brighten it up. Well, you can just change the exposure on this bar, and it only changes the parts that you've painted over with. How is that for amazing and lazy? Okay, so let's want to do another thing. We want to now work on the exposure and the color temperature of this particular crystal. Oops. You can always hit Command Z if you do something accidentally and it steps you back. So I want to work on this green crystal, and I just want to like go crazy and make it super saturated and super clear. So I'm going to just click on the crystal and I'm painting it to bring that out. And so it's a little too fake for me. So, and feel free, don't be scared, you know, you can't break it. Just try and play around with all the different sliders on this panel here. Or what if I wanted to make it just black and white? I don't know. I don't. I'm in a colorful mood. So I'm making it colorful and make it a little darker. And I think I'm happy with that. And now I'm going to add a third brush just to work on this crystal here and pop this out. So again, I'll just go ahead and I know I'm using the same settings as the other crystal, but ooh, let's make that glowing. So see, that's hazy and not so hazy. So I'm just gonna blow that out. Make it like radioactive or something. Yeah. So that's a super basic way to edit photos using Adobe RAW. I think what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to clear this out because I'm not saving this, and I'm going to hit done. Although you probably need to know how to save it. So let's just say you wanted to save that image that you just worked on. You can hit save image, and I would highly recommend, you know, you can save it in the same location or you can put it into the folder that I mentioned to keep your working files, and you could save it as a Photoshop document or a TIFF. Actually, I would say for this purpose to save it as a TIFF. And a TIFF is like a really malleable file that is good to send to printers, and it's a little bit more information than a JPEG, but you can work on it and it won't get damaged like JPEGs do. So, and no, just keep it at 72 for now. So just keep it all the same information, it's fine, and hit save, and then you can go back later and work on it at another time. All right, so I hope this makes sense, and I will see you later. Bye.